everyone, this is Elliot Serrano and Jose Melendez coming to you from Dreamland Comics in Schaumburg, Illinois. Thank you for joining us here on the Comic Culture Warrior video channel. Anyway, so, I had my Dynamite panel. I was on the Dynamite panel with a bunch of other creators. It was my first panel as a creator, as a comic book professional. And I'd seen panels before. But this was the first time I got to actually stand up on the sit up on the stage and have people, you know, ask me questions. Although no one asked anything. So I thought I'd share a little bit of that experience with you. What is it like sitting on a panel with a whole bunch of other creators? It looks kind of like this. Take a look.
I'd like to welcome our panelists. I'll go from left to right. This way I can try and remember everybody. We've got Jeff Katz, the one, the only American original here in the house. We've got Jim Kruger, Mr. Superpower. Jim, I'll gash your eyes out with any horror book. Kahork. Tony, I make the colors look so pretty. Avina, our guy on the boys. We've got Jai. I'm moving on up in the comic industry knits. Doug, I'll make any superpower look good. Flauba. I'm telling you, I'm going to run that real quick. Phil, self-named enforcer Hester. And Elliot, who's just taking pictures of me. Just kidding. Elliot Serrano, who's writing Ash Saves Obama. So anybody who's tired of Obama, just throw stuff at him and me. So,
They made me do it!
We did. We really, really did. So, and we've got Joseph Rybat, Dynamite editor right here. The guy who cracks the whip. I'm Nick Barucci. I'll be your host. Welcome to the Dynamite panel.
It was basically, I was just looking at the backs of a lot of people's heads. When we first got there was not enough seating for everyone, and James Kuhorik and Jai Nitz and a whole bunch of the other Dynamite creators were in the front row, and I got to sit behind them. Mind you, because Matt Wagner arrived late, he was also sitting behind everyone else with me, so I was actually getting to sit next to Matt Wagner during the whole panel, although he talked a hell of a lot more than I did. In fact, I hardly spoke at all.
I was about to say, people would probably want to listen to Matt Wagner talk a lot more than you.
Yes, and I don't blame them. I actually wanted to try to talk to him after the panel was over, and he
wasn't having any of it?
No, he took off, and then next thing you know, he came back again. And I was like, yes! But it was still kind of cool being that on a panel for the first time. And Ash Saves Obama #1 comes out on August 19th, finally. I finally got the date on when it's going to be released, so be on the lookout for that. But, you know, for those who look at comic conventions as like this big thing, I've found this past Comic-Con to be an interesting experience because it gave me some new insight into the nature of what you say fame would be. Okay? This is funny. Now, Marvel and DC were not at Comic-Con. At the Chicago Comic-Con,
They didn't
have any booths. Right. There was no booth. If you've never been to a comic book convention before, this is how it is. You have this great big area set up, like you have a convention center or a warehouse or a gym or something. When you first walk in, it's normally laid out. Well, like the Windy City Comic Con actually takes place in a big gym. Yeah, it's really cool. You'll see. Now, when you first walk in, you have all the publishers with their booths, and they're giving away their tchotchkes and their books, and they're selling in t-shirts and blah, blah, blah. And then you go over an area, you go past all the publishers, then you go to where all the retailers are.
The vendors.
The vendors, where they're selling their comic books and everything. And, man, I'm telling you, $5 graphic novels and dollar comics. You cannot beat that. Mind you,
quarter. There's tons of
quarter. Yeah, but I mean, we're talking stuff that just came out. Like within the past couple months, you could have gotten for $1 at the comic convention. So like a whole run of Agents of Atlas and a bunch of Captain Britons too for $1 an issue.
Wow, really?
So it was pretty cool.
That's totally worth it.
Yeah. And then, once you get past all the vendors, you get into Artist Alley, where all the writers and creators are. For years, what would like Wizard World be like? All the traffic is concentrated in the vendor section. In the publisher section. People filter over into the vendors because, you're going looking for deals. Again, the quarter books and graphic novels. And Artist Alley is almost like a ghost town in many cases. Unless you are one of those fans that knows who you want to see and you know where to find them, people tend to wander through Artist Alley.
Well, that's what the programs are for.
Well, I know, but it's not only what the programs are for, but that's what the booths, like the Marvel and DC booth are. Because I always find it ironic that people will line up to see a particular creator at the Marvel and DC booth, and you'll stand in line for an hour to get them to sign it, and yet if you go later on, you can find that same person in Artist Alley later on in the day and not have to wait in line. And yet, lemmings, fanboys being the lemmings that they are, would rather see that artist at the DC booth.
Yeah, I know.
In the Marvel booth, right? Well, there was no DC and Marvel booth this year. So where was everybody throughout Comic-Con?
Artist Alley?
Artist Alley was swamped. If you wanted to find anybody, you went to Artist Alley. I mean, all these people were going, if they weren't in the vendor area, they were in Artist Alley. And I had never seen Artist Alley as crowded as it was. It seemed like there was this huge shift between the area where the publishers were over to Artist Alley. And, and there were lines for people to meet the different creators in Artist Alley. Who did Comic-Con use to fill the void created by the absence of DC and Wizard? A slew of celebrities.
Oh, yeah.
I'm telling you, half the friggin' WWE Hall of Fame was there.
Well, they were there last year, though.
Yeah, but I mean, you had all these folks from wrestling, all these TNA folks were there, the TNA wrestling folks.
Oh, the TNA was there?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Of course, all the Star Wars folks were there.
Oh, they're there every year, too.
At the very front, you had Gil Gerard and Aaron Gray from the old Buck Rogers show. And Aaron Gray, maybe people remember her also from Silver Spoons. There was nobody at their tables. It was like that was the ghost town. Where all the celebrities were, that was the ghost town. Where people would just kind of walk by and look and then just keep on going. That's what used to happen in Artist Alley before. Now it's happening in the celebrity row.
Did you see Lori Petty?
Yeah, she was there. Same thing. A couple people would talk to her, and then they'd move on.
That sucks. I had to work all weekend at the store, like all 3 days. So this is the first time, which I think I mentioned in the last rant, this is the first time in almost 20 years that I haven't gone to Chicago Comic-Con. And of course, Lori Petty's there, and I actually want to meet somebody there. No.
Dude, you could have had her all to yourself. There was nobody talking. You know who else was there too? And she should fire her agent for booking her at this thing? Taylor Dane. Do you know who Taylor Dane is?
I unfortunately do.
Friggin' singer! Singer! What is a singer doing at a comic convention?
Unless she's putting on a concert at the convention.
Yeah, but still, she was sitting there with her boombox with her CD in it, playing it, and we're talking, she didn't even have an agent or a publicist with her. It was just her sitting there. Nobody was talking to her. Nobody was going by and saying hello. No, it was it was just really, it was eerie. And don't get me wrong, this was on Saturday. I'm not talking about this happening on a Thursday at a preview night. I'm not even talking about on Friday, which a lot of people say is a slow day. We're talking the middle of Saturday, 12 o'clock on a Saturday, that's when things get really crazy at a comic convention. The celebrities were sitting there almost literally twiddling their thumbs. It was the most surreal thing I'd ever seen. It was surreal. So, again, it just made me think, and I was asking a lot of folks, really? Does the presence of Marvel and DC mean that much for a comic convention? That if they're not there, it totally skews the entire dynamic of the event? Because, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying it was bad. The people at Artist Alley loved that they were getting all that attention.
Yeah, I think it's more so DC not being there. Because remember, a few years back, Marvel didn't do booths.
Yeah,
Remember when Marvel was restructuring and shit like that? that they didn't even do booths.
Right.
They just did panels, and but DC was there. But here's the thing: when people go there, they know they can go to the DC booth because you get to see all of the upcoming like prototypes for the DC Direct figures. You get to see like all the new statues and stuff like that coming out. And then you get like free buttons and pins and free comics.
Right.
Not only just to meet creators there, but that's like a whole other thing that, you know, if I was going to go see the DC booth this year and they weren't there, I'd have been fucking pissed.
Yeah, there wasn't a whole lot. I mean, again, there were a ton of DC creators there.
Right.
But if you wanted to see them, you had to find them in Artist Alley. And in fact, I don't even remember a whole lot of DC panels taking place. It was mostly Marvel stuff.
They have a DC Nation panel?
If they did, I only went on Friday. I only went on Saturday. I went to all the AfterCon stuff on Friday and Saturday too, which was like a story in and of itself too. But again, it just amazed me at how different the whole thing felt. And I'm not saying different really was bad. People still had fun. If this was your first Comic-Con.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned it because there was a guy who came into the store yesterday who went to the con on Friday, and he heard me. He overheard me talking to somebody about like DC Marvel not being there, and this guy was like, "Well." He's like, I don't know, I thought the Wizard World was pretty good. I'm like, really? I'm like, was this your first time going? He's like, yeah. I'm like, well, okay, that's why. Because he's like, well, yeah, I didn't know, you know, it's my first comic convention, so I don't really know what to draw from. I'm like, well, trust me, man. Like from what I heard from other people with DC and Marvel not being there, it was a completely different feeling.
There were a couple things that also felt a little... Okay, first, the convention center looked beat up. It really looked bad. It did not...
It never looks good.
Yeah, but I'm saying there was something about it where it didn't feel like a show that had been going on for years and years. Okay? Everything looked kind of dirty and kind of... Oh, X-Pac is there, you know, like all by himself. And you have some people showing up and they have their little handwritten signs, you know, for their booze. Oh.
Was he playing his porn tape at his table?
No, he was just standing there, again, all by himself.
Yeah, X-Pac deserves to be by himself.
Yeah, really. Until he shows up on Raw next week or something. But it didn't feel like a show that had been running for a while. You would think that the way Wizard's been running this thing for as long as they have. Oh, okay, we're calling it Chicago Comic-Con now. Oh yeah, another thing, the logo for Chicago Comic-Con.
Is it off of like the NBA?
The NBA one, but if you got the Comic-Con bag, all the signage had the Comic-Con logo with the Chicago skyline, but if you got a Comic-Con bag, it had the New York skyline on it. So they didn't change everything for the Chicago Comic-Con. And
that would make sense because fucking Wizard. We talked about that Wizard. It used to be called Wizard World, and then it's just such a bad stigma now to the name Wizard that they went back and started using Chicago Comic-Con. And the fact that they didn't even fucking bring like their own bags for Chicago.
Yeah, that was. And if a major faux pas is to try to push New York crap on Chicagoans, that's major faux pas.
Well, speaking of New York, though, I mean, we're getting a new convention in April, put on by the same guys who do the New York comic convention, and
that's what everyone was talking about.
And DC and Marvel have already signed up to be there, and their booths are the square footage that they rented. I read is supposed to be their booths are supposed to be as big as their San Diego booths. So this convention is going to be pretty fucking huge, which is pretty cool.
It should be.
Fuck Wizard, like I said last time. I'm looking forward to this other new convention.
Well, we talked about that quite a bit in Last Rants last time. So, all right. So I just wanted to share that with you folks, and when we come back, we'll get into some reviews, which I know you guys want to hear. So we'll see you then.